actually, as we bring in our next guest, Nikki Swarn, who is with KUVO, the Drop in Denver. Nikki's community also, was deeply impacted by lack of federal oversight. When we saw the massive consolidation of the commercial radio industry, which changed radio from an industry that has historically been live and local and committed to community and understanding the local marketplace to something that was very different. Now, Nikki is, as program director at KUVO, the Drop in Denver, is helping pioneer public radio, trying to understand where there are some unbelievably huge gaps in terms of communities that are being served and platforms that are being offered. Not only losing those local voices on the commercial side of the dial, but needing to see some improvements on the public radio side. So, Nikki, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah,
well, we have heard about the Drop for some time now, and there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement about the work that you're doing. Again, pioneering a new program approach and new audience engagement work on the public radio side of the dial. Could you speak a little bit about what the Drop is and what your approach is and what you're trying to accomplish?
Absolutely. So the Drop is, we are, I say we're an anomaly kind of sort of, because we exist as a stream only station. We are on the HD2 side of the dial. We are sister stations to 89.3 KUVO Jazz, which is a historic station here in the Mile High City and throughout Colorado. They have 35 years of broadcast excellence. And we started as a project and as an opportunity from CPB. So I would be remiss if I didn't thank Jackie Gales Webb and Kathy Merritt for all of their amazing support for the launch of the station. On Monday, the 29th of June, we turned one. It's been a year of broadcasting for us. And in that year, we actually won an award as Denver's best new radio station 2020. So from Westward Magazine, which is great because that is a catalyst for culture. It's a cultural magazine and it's recognizing the work that we're doing here. This project, this initiative really was to bring public media into and a community into an equal space. Music is a great equalizer. It doesn't matter what you look like or what your ethnicity is, what your sexual orientation is. It's just an equalizer. Everybody can enjoy great music. And with the invention of the Drop, we saw a really cool opportunity here in Colorado to speak to an audience that was maybe underserved by public media. And we started out, the name The Drop wasn't put together by me. We actually named by the community. The community put that out over social media and said, what should we name this thing? We want it to be your station, the people's station. And so what should we call it? And they picked The Drop. And so from the beginning, we've been that catalyst in the community and keeping our ear to the ground. And Dana spoke a lot about local venues. I made a transition from commercial radio into public media because I wanted that opportunity to take our independent artists and truly give them a place where they could be played consistently. Hip hop and R&B really doesn't have a big home for independent music here in Colorado. And so we wanted to say, hey, we're welcoming, you can come align yourselves with us. It's part of the mission work. It was the very first cornerstone and foundation piece that we put together. It's the first thing I said, we got to play locals every day as much as we can and then have featured shows and do all this extra stuff. And so it's been our mission this entire time. And it's a really lucky, we're in a position that makes it both polarizing, but lucky at the same time, because we're talking to an audience that's unfamiliar, like the traditional audience of public media isn't familiar with this brash kind of run at you hip hop music necessarily. And so we are navigating that space trepidatiously, but we're going at it full steam. I just feel like this is such a passion project. Like I eat, sleep, and breathe this all day. I work around the clock and I enjoy it. It's what I love to do. And also it gives us a chance to have a platform to have bigger conversations. One of the great things is I've got 3 African-American male on-air personalities. And part of that was really intentional on my behalf to hire them. because I felt like nowhere in Colorado were we getting an authentic male African-American voice. And I wanted to show the community that this is an important part. We are part of the fabric, the civic fabric of this state. And here we can have these real earnest conversations in a great way that's not necessarily politicized or romanticized, but earnest. And we can open up the doorways to media and be able to share ideas and share concepts and be able to actually confront truth so we can make change.
It's amazing. So Colorado in our sector and the kind of music policy and the music city conversation, you know, has been a real bellwether and a real leader in terms of a state that's trying to be very intentional around the alignment of policy and their civic institutions and their nonprofit institutions, and where the universities and education fit into that. And even, you know, we had, you know, a couple of weeks ago, our friend, you know, Jamie Duffy from Youth on Record was on, you know, just talking about what they're doing during the summer. And we always say they're our favorite, although we can't play favorites, but they always are the favorite. And
that's a good favorite to have. Youth on Record is an incredible organization. It is so transformative.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, I want to go a little bit deeper in terms of this platform conversation, because it was very interesting. And this is an outside Colorado perspective. And so this may not be true, right? Obviously nothing has to be true, but, you know, it felt like Colorado went, in terms of national music reputation, for not really being thought of as a lot of stuff happening. And then all of a sudden there was a lot of stuff happening. And again, not to be disrespectful to these artists or their success or their talent, but it felt like it was coming from a niche that had a lot of similar aesthetics, you know. So you had Lumineers go huge.
Very well said.
Very
well said.
Yeah. And again, that's not a disrespect, but it did feel like, again, there was just a lot missing in terms of community. And I'd love for you to speak a little bit more, especially if you could contrast sort of like what is commercial radio good at versus what is the role of public radio, and what are the sort of the obligations of those institutions as they relate to local culture and local platforms?
Absolutely. Colorado has traditionally been known as a rock state, rock and roll state. You know, early on in our trajectory, like folks like Barry Fay and all of those old school promoters were using Colorado as a thoroughfare to, if you wanted to play on the West Coast, you had to come through Colorado, you had to come through Denver. And that's how Red Rocks got its big historical like state, was because everybody was playing Red Rocks, and it became, you know, we always call it the eighth wonder, and it became this big place. And then if you wanted to go to the East Coast, you had to come from the West, you had to come through Colorado. And that was a promoter stance. Chuck Morris, you know, Barry Fay, they kind of developed our national scene, to be honest. And when you talk about the exclusivity of one type of music, one genre of music, I actually used to work for Alice 105.9. I've worked for almost every radio station in this market. Believe it or not, I've been in radio 22 years. And it is true. It's true. And part of that had to do with the demographic of music, though. At the time, pop music, and that was all considered pop music, was just the prevailing factor. In 2017, Nielsen Ratings released that hip hop and R&B, in particular, mostly hip hop / urban music, was the #1 consumed medium of music. And so that forced a change in the wave of how things happen. The other thing that was really important is that Colorado consumes a lot of music and a lot of live music. Per capita, we were like second in terms of live tickets sold. And so that also changed. And a lot of the artists that were coming to town were hip hop and R&B and urban artists. And so, but there was really no urban extension. There are rhythmic stations. So I'm not going to say that there aren't a rhythmic station here. KS 107.5, I worked for them too. It was the behemoth. I mean, it is a heritage station, but I remember when it started. When it started, it was controversial. No one wanted to mess with KS 107.5. Oh, that's that super urban ratchet hood station. And so we've had a lot of work in terms of changing the narrative about hip hop and about this music genre, because it was an ideological bias that existed towards the format itself. And the cool thing about being in public media and the relationship and between commercial and public is there is a relationship there. Some of the things that we do on the air are very much in the vein of commercial in terms of how fast we move, how quick our breaks are. We don't belabor the point because we want to give as much music as possible. But where we really are taking up that mantra and that mantle of public media is in how we discuss community events, how we engage with our localized community, how we empower those voices that aren't normally heard, and how we get on the ground level. Commercial radio doesn't have the time to get on the ground level. They just don't. We've got to try to hurry and accomplish everything. We've got to make sure everybody's happy. We've got to, satisfy all these spots and dots and all that kind of stuff. They don't necessarily have that time to organically deep dive. We do. It's the basis of what we do as public media. It's that open conversation and the time that it takes. Our pressures are different. Our drives are a little bit different. At the end of the day, if this means I have to go stand on a street corner and hold a sign that says, please give me $5 because I really want to keep public media on the air, I will do it, because it is about this methodology and it is about connecting locally with our community. And it is my heart's beat, I tell you, every day.
I love everything you're saying, Nikki, and I've been fortunate to work around media advocacy for a long time. And I think that this is always, again, we talk about in the music community, there are very few kind of binary A versus B dynamics, and radio is one of the few ones where that exists. And, commercial radio is built entirely on a business model of identifying a specific advertising demographic that you can maximize your ad dollars to, support the corporate bottom line, and has very little to do with all the other things that, again, radio historically has been good at. And public radio fundamentally is about building a trusting relationship with an audience to say, this is something I think you want to hear. And I'm putting my credibility on the line by playing this, that if you don't want to hear this, you're going to lose trust in me. And it's just a fundamentally different relationship. And as, again, and we talked again about this during Dana's conversation. I mean, there are things that we lost. There are things that we lost as policies in the late 90s and, through the mid 2000s that are going to be very hard to get back in terms of consolidation and scale and how to reform the commercial marketplace. But there are things that we can build. And I think one of the most interesting conversations, again, in our entire sector, and something that Music Policy Forum and our partners think a lot about over the next 15 years, is there's going to be a complete reconsideration of what public media means. We right now put a lot of money into legacy technologies that are not going to be things that are going to be invested in 15 or 20 years in terms of some of the overall over-the-air transmissions and things like that. And it's going to be critical to really be mindful of who is at the table to determine what the future public media is. And again, for you and the Drop and your colleagues to be really putting something tangible on the table to say, well, let's try something different, because we think that there may be a gap here. There may be a big gap that public media is not reaching, that we would like to do some innovating around to see what it means and how we can share that information then with other communities and other cities through Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the great leadership team there. So I'm just so stoked about what you're doing. Just in closing, so who locally, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, I didn't ask you to prepare this, but who's in Denver that we need to know about? Who's blowing up in Colorado that in 6 months, like if we tell our kids about it now, in 6 months they'll be like, oh, how'd you know that, Dad? You're so cool. Like, is there anything coming?
Our music scene is incredible. It's vibrant, and it's been a big part of my life. Like, I actually have aligned myself. I used to be an artist manager, so all the conversations around clubs and touring and all of that, it's still very valuable. We run 2 shows for independent artists. In addition to our daily play of independence, we have focus shows on music education, which is a big part of what we do. But in terms of artists that are on the rise and on the move, I definitely, we have to say Old Man Saxon is at the very top of his game. I mean, he was a part of the Netflix special with Cardi B and all of that. And he actually was going to do a radio takeover before COVID hit. We were going to give him the controls of the radio station. Nice. Him come on and bring on whomever he wanted and do that kind of thing, because we thought it was like kind of cool, and we didn't think anybody else would do it, and we said, why not? I think Mandy Groves, I think J Triiiple, who I love J Triiiple. She represents such a great dynamic orientation to all of music. She is open and vibrant. We did our first PBS broadcast with her. The very first time that we got a chance to show what the drop was through an interview with her, and it was so impactful and great. I think Black Pegasus out of Colorado Springs, because this is the cool part about being digital.
Yeah.
We encompass the entire state, and our relationship through music is statewide. So it's not just, hey, we're in the Mile High City and it's only about Denver. No, it's about the entire state of Colorado, and how can we service you, Colorado, with our music.
That's awesome. I love your passion. I love it. It just popped up the screen. So what I would love, Nikki, if you have a moment when we move on to your next guest, if you could pop those names into the chat just so people could copy them, and everybody who's interested in finding those artists, go to their Bandcamp and download some music, and let's get some artists.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're redesigning our website. Our new website will be coming out very soon. You'll be able to do a lot of music sampling. We have features, and you'll be able to play the music right from our website and see what these artists look like and how they're related and how you can connect with them. And then I'll also put my email in the chat, because I feel like connectivity is very important, especially through music. And the more that we network and connect with each other, the better the music community is, the deeper and richer we are in terms of overall movement and connectivity.
That's so great. Nikki, it's so great to have you on. I really appreciate you taking time out to interview with us. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.